Welcome to Marcy Bond's Publishing Lounge. I am Marcy Bond, the founder and CEO of Wild Child Publishing and Freya's Bower. And you can find me in a lot of places. Marcy Bond, M-A-R-C-I, B as in boy, A-U-N as in Nancy, on Google+, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and just about every social media that I am on. If I want to introduce or have my guests introduce themselves, this is a fabulous publishing services duo, Jim and Zetta Brown. Zetta, would you like to start?
Okay. Hi, I'm Zetta. I'm Zetta Brown, jimandzettabrown.com or jimandzetta.com. Let me get it right. I'm not used to public speaking, so I'm a writer.
You're right.
She does plenty of private speaking, trust me.
Well, she's like my husband. So, and Jim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Jim Brown, and as you can tell from my accent, I am not American. I'm from Scotland. I've known Marcy many, many years, seems like anyway. But yes,
thanks.
Yep, yeah, you can find us on the internet. If you just type in Jim and Zetta with or without spaces, you'll see lots of us. We've just got a blog started up and a new Twitter account, and just trying to get really active in the industry. We are publishing services providers, so we provide, let's say, all sorts of services: editing, ebook conversion, print typesetting, cover design, whatever you need to get a book published. That's what we do. We take the strain off the authors, allow them to write. That's about the main thing.
Which is very important. As a publisher, I know what that's like. I also sometimes write. So I seem to do a lot less writing because I'm so busy publishing. So, yes. And taking care of everybody else. So I totally get what it is. So now, how did you guys originally get into the publishing industry?
I wanted to be a writer.
You wanted to be a writer, Zetta? You are a writer.
I always wanted to be a published author. So, I mean, I was going to do it one way or another, even before Jim and I met. But it was convenient that when we got together, he was already starting to publish online, with lots of lists.
It was actually publishing that brought us together, really, the writing side of it, and that's how we originally met. But we both had day jobs when we got married and lived in Scotland. We both had day jobs, so it was actually when my mother took quite ill, and one of us had to give up the job. So I gave up the job and decided to start something from working from home, and that's when we started jimandzetta.com.
Oh, that's marvelous. As you can hear in the background, my phone is ringing only because I am trying to video something. And the only time my phone rings is when, something like this is going on. I love it. Wow. So did you guys meet online then?
Yes, we were part of the same writers group. And it was quite funny actually. We'd known who each other was for a couple of years because we were part of the same group. But she got an email one day that looked as if it was a virus email and looked as if it came from me. So she was ready to tear me a new one. But I reassured her I hadn't sent that, and then it just went from there.
Yeah, it went almost from zero to ugly real fast. Because, we had just started, chatting, not necessarily privately, but, sending messages here and there. And then all of a sudden I get this, look like a virus. And it's like I was about to lay into him, but found out who the problem was. It was this woman who never figured out how to, use a firewall or a virus scanner or whatever. But anyway, so...
There are still people who are like that now.
Oh, yes. You've got to be very careful. I mean, you can't be too careful with internet security. You really can't. Changing passwords. I mean, our internet at home here, we've got password, and I have an archive drive which is further passworded, so you can't access it without a further password. You have to have security these days.
It's like double redundant.
And I still don't trust the cloud, to be honest with you, because you don't know where that server is.
Yeah.
It's different if you've got your own cloud, your own archive server, which is easy to set up. You can have your own cloud at home. You don't actually have to put it in someone else's.
No, I know. My husband has all of that set up, and I let him take care of all of that. Before I started doing the publishing full time and everything, I was working as a librarian, and believe it or not, I was actually techie enough to be the one kind of having to clean off the library computers and everything like that, because people would go to places they're not supposed to, so okay, so I want to know something about, for instance, like your editing services, and you also say you have conversion. I know, Jim, that you guys do conversion, or at least you used to, for All Romance ebooks and a number of other places.
Yes, we're still the sole provider of services for ARE, All Romance ebooks, and a few other publishers yet. But we've seen a slight drop off on the publisher side, and seeing more and more self-published authors coming in looking for services. So it's a slight shift in sort of focus.
Well, surely you heard that Amber Quill Press is closing, right?
Yeah, I heard that today. Or was it yesterday? Yesterday I heard that.
Yeah, that was through our publishing group. And then
they've been around.
I also since 2002.
Yeah.
So they closed. I guess they said it had to do with the all of the returns that they get from Amazon, and I know that's hit a lot of publishers hard. Some were saying they only get 2 to 3% returns, but sometimes when you have really big authors that sell a lot, I've seen up to 5 to 10% returns. So, say they're selling 500 copies or something a week, and you get 50 returns. That these aren't people who just made a mistake and downloaded the wrong thing. So, and then I don't know if the link was through the group or if I saw it somewhere else on the net, but someone posted a link to the Dear Author blog that was talking about how Samhain is cutting back on the number of their releases because of the downturn in sales. Yeah. So I really think that, again, I think that has a lot to do, too, with all of the people coming in, and all of the market is just getting flooded with books and ebooks and more ebooks. Yeah, not all of the same quality.
No, definitely not. Yeah. I read some.
You read them. Well, and that's why editing services and conversion services and all of that are so important. That's why people like you are so important.
Oh yeah. The quality of what as a conversion service, we can't do anything to the quality of the actual content, but I can make it look good, at least that.
Yep, because even on Mythbusters, they prove that you can polish a lump of,
Yeah.
So I mean, you can make anything look pretty, but
no, it's true.
It's what the content itself. That's what counts. Really.
Well, I have a friend who does some editing, and she received. She doesn't take everything; she's just too busy, and she received a submission. It was something similar to the dinosaur porn. And she's like, I'm not doing this one. That's what she said. I'm sorry, I just don't do the dinosaur porn.
Yeah, there's some real creative thinkers out there, and there's a niche for it. So
probably, yeah.
No, there is.
Well, there's people are buying it, but I don't understand the appeal. But that's just me. That is just me. So everybody has their thing that they. That's not just you. Well, but there are a lot of people who buy it.
And one of my, I do know, because I have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, and you'll see, like when you're looking for, you look at certain genres that you want to read from, you'll see what's really popular, or so what's coming up first, and you do have, there is a strong trend or popularity in some of the taboo subjects. So there's a range of stuff out there, and it's out there.
There's a reason why they're taboo,
Yes.
But the funny thing is, since there's more of it and more people are buying it, it's raising up in the ranks, so it's becoming more visible.
Right. So, Jim, I've never actually seen any of your books. What kind of books do you write, or stories? I mean, I know that you guys have had you have a publishing house, but you are very selective about what you publish through that. I think we all are, but you're even more so. But I was kind of curious because I have only ever known you as the publisher and conversion man. I wasn't aware that you actually write.
I did. I used to write some things. It was just before at the same time that I met Zetta, and sometimes I dabble in writing things. I had a few things posted online on sort of humorous erotica at the time, but I'm not as polished a writer as what Zetta is. But both of us actually are working on books at the moment. Zetta's she's working on how to publish. How to compile and publish an anthology, and I'm working on a self-publishing guide. It's a definitive guide to self-publishing, sort of
that's
up to the minute for 2016.
That's great. I know Zetta's good because she actually wrote a story for us in one of our anthologies.
She did, yes.
Yes.
That was fun.
It was a sweet romance. That one did very, very well, and we were able to donate a lot of money to A Window Between Worlds. So that was really, really nice.
She's a really good writer. She won't admit it, but she's an excellent writer.
Well, she's an artist, and artists rarely recognize how good they are.
I can't toot my own horn.
You should toot your own horn. Well,
I'm trying.
You're trying. It's hard. I totally get how hard it is to toot your own horn. Not just toot, but toot your own horn. Because tooting's pretty easy, but tooting your own horn is very hard. So I totally get it.
And I can toot for other people. I don't mind tooting for other people. When you toot for yourself, that can be embarrassing.
Especially depending on where you are. So what is your ETA on these two books that you're writing?
I'm about, since I'm not a math major, I was going to say I'm like 3/5 done, more than 2/3 done. I'm pretty close to done.
You're pretty.
I got like maybe three more sections I need to fill out and complete, and then I'll be ready for it to go through a couple of, good proofread, edit, and then it should be ready to go. So I'm hoping by the end of February. But, people can sign up for our newsletter and be kept informed, for when it comes out.
Where is your newsletter?
I'm sorry?
Where can they find your newsletter?
Jim?
You can get there's a sign up section on the front page of the blog, which is blog.jimandzetta.com.
Okay.
And there's also a tab on the Facebook Jim and Zetta Facebook page.
Okay.
Or to join the newsletter, sign up for the newsletter.
Fabulous.
So my book is, I'd hoped to get a good bit of it done in December, but December turned out quite busier than I hoped. So I'm hoping to get a good bulk of it written this month. It's all in my head, so it's just a question of flowing it pen to paper, so to speak, virtual pen to paper.
I've heard that before. I know that one. That's me too. Oh, it's all in my head. All I've got to do is put it right down. 3 years later, all I've got to do is put it right down. I've been there, done that.
Because Jim, he has a lot of good ideas, and he's very funny. And he has a twisted mind, twisted sense of humor, which I like, obviously. And there was something that we wanted to collaborate with. On a creative, not nonfiction, but a fiction series that we want to collaborate on, but trying to get him pinned down, since he's so busy, he's all about the customer service.
Well, yeah, the customer has to come first, that's the thing. We have to deal with that. But we've got we've got the blog started up and Twitter, and the websites are being updated. And after that, but shall we mention the title of the fiction?
Absolutely.
No, not yet. Should we? Is that
what?
The fiction collaboration. Should we mention the title?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the Men from Haggis. It's a Scottish humorous detective agency. So
it's called the what? The
Men from Haggis.
The men from Haggis.
Yeah.
Haggis. Nice. Nice. That's lovely food.
So,
I've never actually tried it, but I've never tried haggis, but it doesn't really appeal. So
for some,
the haggis in the title is an acronym for their detective agency.
Oh, well, that's cool.
So,
clever.
Yeah. So it'll come to fruition at some point. Hopefully this year.
Will it be a mystery then?
No, it's a series of what you might call
humorous noir,
humorous Perry Mason style mysteries, and
set in Scotland, set in Glasgow. Glasgow.
But the series has an underlying plot that doesn't get resolved until the final book in the series.
Oh, that's cool. How many books are going to be? Do you know?
Well, I think we're looking at about 7 or 8. Yeah.
Wow.
And they're not going to be very long. Let's have more like maybe novellas.
Novella style, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Right.
Well, I've been to Glasgow once.
Oh, Glasgow's wonderful, yeah.
They were very, very nice people.
Yeah.
But I was able to understand German more than I understand them. So I had a hard time. They were very, very nice, but it was like, are you sure you speak English?
Yeah, I still tell Jim to speak English at times.
Yeah. A heavy Glaswegian accent is pretty hard to follow.
I tell people when I was living over there, when I first got there, it took me a good 6 months to, really learn what they were saying, to hear and understand what they were saying. And as soon as I opened my mouth, they knew I wasn't from there.
I bet.
He says, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Texas." And it was always the same 3 questions. Where are you from? So, you from Texas? And as I say, I'm from Texas. And then at the time, it's like, what do you think of George Bush?
Yeah.
So those were always the first questions out of people's mouths. So,
well, I have to say, coming from California, whenever I learned very quickly when I was traveling through Europe that if I just said I was from California, I wasn't an American, I was from California, and that made everything better. Because I knew Pamela Anderson, I knew David Hasselhoff. Yeah, I lived in LA and I was a Babe Watch girl, or whatever. It was very funny.
They thought I was from, oh, Dallas. Have you been to South Fork? What about JR? I was like, oh, no.
Yeah, it's like most people, Scots people haven't been to Edinburgh Castle and don't have any intention of going there.
Yeah.
It's a tourist thing.
Yeah. It's a beautiful castle, though.
It is. Actually, I always tell people to, if they can, obviously, Edinburgh is a touristy location, but if they can, to go to Stirling Castle, which is, in my opinion, a far better tourist spot.
I don't think I got to Stirling. I actually stayed with a family in Scotland. I mean, in Edinburgh for a couple of days, because, like, when I went to Ireland and I had a pen pal there, they invited me to stay for like 7, 8, 9 days. In Scotland, I mean, when I went to Edinburgh, they're like, "So you're going to stay for 2 days, right?" I'm like, "Okay," So it was, but they were very, very nice, and he took me up to the mountain above, which has a there was some type of link to King Arthur, and it had I don't remember all of it. I remember I wrote it down because I took copious notes and wrote in a journal. So I need to pull that out. But it was very interesting because it was this whole, all of this history that I wouldn't have known if I hadn't been there with a native. Yeah. And like they said, they were very, very nice, but it was completely a different thing. I stayed with some people in Belgium. Of course, we knew the family and they knew my family well. And they were, "You can stay here for as long as you like, but we're not going to entertain you." So, which was fine. I actually prefer that. That's the difference between, I think, Americans and Europeans, is that Americans, really 2 days or weekend is about as long as we want you to come, because we're going to feel like we have to entertain you the entire time. And over in Europe, it was like, "Well, you're welcome to stay here, but we're not going to entertain you. We might take you out 1 or 2 nights, but the rest of the time we have a life. So you can stay for, a week or so, but you're on your own." And I really liked that, because then you don't have to be lockstep with someone and you don't feel like you're,
right.
So much of a burden
for you. No.
Right? But, they were really cool about it. You have a place to stay. In Belgium, I was within walking distance to the Eurail. So I could travel, as far as I could go, a couple hours, and go see wherever I wanted to go within that was close to Brussels. So it was very nice. That kind of thing it's so different. Now, I'm curious about, do you also do formatting for like Ingram Spark? And I'm sure you could format for CreateSpace. And then what kind of conversions do you do now? What are the main conversions that people want you to do now for the ebooks?
Well, I do print conversions, yes, for Ingram Spark, LSI, CreateSpace, or I've even done them for independent printers. As long as I know what their specifications are, it's pretty easy to format a print book for that. But the main formats just now, and you'll know this yourself, are basically EPUB and the Kindle format.
Yeah.
The other ones have pretty much fallen into obscurity now.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. In fact, I think ARE is only one of two vendors I know that take the PDF now as well.
I think
yeah.
Smashwords. Maybe Smashwords still does? Maybe not. Maybe I'm getting confused.
Well, you know what? Overdrive does too.
Yeah.
Overdrive will take the PDF.
Yeah, Overdrive, ARE, and I think maybe Drafted Digital. I don't know. Not sure about that. But yeah, even PDFs beginning to fall away. It was the main format for many years. First thing you did when you made an ebook was you made a PDF format, because that's what people read.
Well, I think it for many years it was like 95% of all downloads were PDF.
Yep.
So yeah, and it's in. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say now it's changed obviously from then too, because everybody's got tablets and ebook readers, but I think everybody's been waiting on the next step up, which is video and audio embedded into the file, etc. That hasn't quite come about yet, and one of the reasons for that is the languages they're going to use to do that. The new version of CSS and HTML5, they're not due to finish development until into the 2020s. So that's kind of what's stalling things. I mean, there's some websites use HTML5 now, or they utilize it. I don't say they use it. It's
right.
Normal HTML.
Well, yeah, I'm fairly certain that I haven't actually done it, but my daughter has with the book creator that Apple has. You can put all of that stuff in there. And it will create like an EPUB out of it, and you can upload that to iTunes. Now, I mean, personally, I think that iTunes really, if they wanted to be, Apple could be a player within ebooks. They just have not done anything with that, and I wish they would, honestly, because I really feel like that there needs to be some threat to Amazon, so that there's more of an open market, and just that way, so that Amazon doesn't feel like they can treat the authors and the publishers any way they want. Right now, the biggest issue, I don't know how often you use their iBooks or their iBook store. I am primarily a Mac person, so I love the iPad. I love reading with my iBooks. I do have a Kindle. I just don't like it as well as the iBooks. And what the thing is that their iTunes store is so hard to navigate.
Yes.
And it's hard to find things. Sometimes I have to go onto Google to find things that I'm looking for, and it'll come up and it'll show up on iTunes and the iBook store, and that's very, very telling. Like I said, I really think if they wanted to be, they could be a player, and they could give Amazon a run for their money if they wanted to.
Exactly.
Barnes and Noble seems to have lost the plot. You never had a plot, if you ask me.
It's always amazed me how Barnes & Noble couldn't make it work right at the start of a booming industry.
And they took over fiction-wise.
Yeah, they did.
So they could have. And they're known as a bookstore. I mean, one of the things I love about iTunes and I love about Barnes & Noble is that it's much harder to return a book, an ebook.
Yeah.
So, when you make sales there, you're not going to have... I mean, I had a book go off contract, and 6 months later... That didn't work. That made a lot of noise.
Sorry.
That's okay. The book went out of contract. I pulled it off, and 6 months later, there was a return for the book.
Yeah.
From Amazon. I'm like, how can you even give a return for a book when it's been, you say you give it a week. Oh, well, they made a mistake. Yeah. 6 months later?
It's a bit of a catch-22 with Amazon. Now, you've been here since the start, since when the Kindle first came out.
Yeah.
So I've always been under the strong impression, I still am, that Amazon virtually forced the others to actually do something. They didn't. I don't think they wanted to. I don't think that was their main aim, but they had to do something, or they were going to get left really full behind. And since then, it's like I say, it's like a double-edged sword. Amazon are hugely customer orientated, and I know that from my own personal experience, having bought something off Amazon that didn't go well. I mean, they treated me amazingly. I was done like in 10 minutes and I had a 10% discount and a $40 discount further off a new item. They were really quick at doing that, and it's because of that customer service that Kindle has exploded. So that's the benefit. But the other side of the sword is that because of that customer service, they'll give returns back on the books a lot more easily.
Right.
You get it in one hand, you lose a bit in the other hand. But it's like you say, until somebody steps up and actually makes a goal out of being a competitor to Amazon, Amazon's going to have it all their own way.
Yeah. It's really unfortunate. I mean, unfortunate because I think that when you have it's much better for an industry for there to be competition, at least for the consumer.
Of course, yeah.
And also for the providers, like the publishers, because then they have other options of where they can sell their products.
Yes.
I think that that's a big thing.
It is.
That is a big thing.
Yeah. But Amazon is definitely the main player, the big player. But I would always warn people, don't just go with Amazon.
Yeah.
No matter how good it is at the moment, Amazon's a business. They look after their own interests. They'll do things and they'll change things that suit their business model. It doesn't suit you. You're a supplier of the product.
Right.
They'll sell the product as it suits them.
You can't have all your eggs in one basket, because
of course, yeah.
I've been doing a American Greed marathon for the last several weeks, and it's always the same thing. People lose their life savings because they put all their eggs in one basket with some shady investor or investment, and something happens and it's all gone and there's nothing that can be done. So
you're absolutely right. No, it is. It's. I always try to encourage people, and people say, "Well, you can't be in Amazon Select unless you do that," and that's one of the things that I find very interesting, that the DOJ hasn't gone after Amazon, because those are predatory business practices, saying that the only way that you can use this certain service that we have is by not putting, you can't sell your books anywhere else. And I find it very, very interesting that the DOJ hasn't gone after them. But then when you start, and this is, we're kind of getting into politics here. The reason for that, and basically it kind of seems like any kind of decision that's made by any administration, doesn't matter what administration it is, it all comes down to who's lining whose pockets. And, so like I said, it doesn't matter about administrations. From what I understand, Amazon and Jeff Bezos donated a lot of money to the DNC and to Obama's campaign. And, and probably the same thing would have happened if it had been one of the Bushes in office. Because it really unfortunately has come down to that kind of thing. But I do feel like the DOJ needs to step up and start, because right now Amazon is very close to being a monopoly. They have the entire supply chain, and I don't care if CreateSpace is just one of their subsidiary companies and it's supposedly a separate company. It's still owned by Amazon, just like Audible.
Yes.
Audible is an audiobooks, and it's still owned by Amazon. And so that when you have, and then they're the biggest supplier out there. We're selling books and selling ebooks and selling audiobooks. When you have that happening, and now they've gotten into doing the video, not the video, but the TV shows, and they're even talking about movies. And when I see that happening, it's like at some point we have to have government step in and break them up, because otherwise you're going to have another Standard Oil.
Yep, it's all Prime driven. Because that's what they're doing. They're building their Amazon Prime core base. Well, I have to admit, I am a member of Prime. So we, yeah, so it's I love. I went to Barnes and Noble right before Christmas, a couple of weeks before Christmas, to order some books. I thought, you know what? I will support the competitor, because here I complain and moan and groan about Amazon, even though they've been very good to me in many ways. There's also been the downside. And like I said, I think that competition is very important in a marketplace. And so I thought, I will go and order these books from Barnes and Noble. And so I went through, and they said, because I got an ad from them saying, order by this date and you will have them by Christmas. So I went in and I clicked through the ad, and I was about to place the order, and the shipping was, I'm like, okay, I don't mind paying a little bit for shipping. And the shipping was like $5 or something, but I wasn't going to get either of the books until January 9th. Wow. I'm like, wait a minute. Why would you tell me that you can get them to me in time, and now you're saying, well, we can't guarantee them until January 9th? Have you heard of priority shipping?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, so it's definitely Barnes and Noble people need to step up their game
Definitely.
if they really want to compete. And you have to wonder the people who are running these different places. Tim Cook knows what he's doing, and Apple is doing whatever they're doing. They're not focused on this part of the market.
Yeah.
But Barnes and Noble, this is what they're supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Right? I'm sorry, I keep bumping
especially
my
when
laptop.
you can, because we've done it several times. We've ordered something from Amazon that gets delivered the same day because we're close to the main warehouse in Dallas.
Well, one of them, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's disappointing because we don't live too far from a Barnes and Noble, and I kid you not, because I counted on my hand the number of times I went into the store and just was not enticed to buy any book off the shelf. You know, even if I looked for something, it's like, because usually if I'm going to go into a bookstore, I'm going to get something because I got money in my pocket. It's burning, and I want to spend. And I mean, I just left without getting anything. So
Left and went to half price books.
yeah, I like used bookstores. I have no problem with them, but you know, there's not a lot of choice. You know, when you're trying to go retail, you know, if you want to find something retail, you know, so I go to Barnes and Noble and I'll buy gifts, but I won't necessarily buy any books. You know, so you go back to Amazon. That's just me.
Well, I like I said, I really like the iBooks, and usually I will, if I see someone whose books, an author I enjoy reading, and I prefer the ebooks because, quite frankly, I hole up in my house unless I go out swimming or I have to go shopping for food or something. I like going out, but at the same time, this is LA, and I just don't want to deal with it. So it sounds awful. I've gotten really lazy. So I will go, and the first place I go is I will look on iBooks to see if I can buy it there. The other thing is, too, is that I know that iBooks pays 70%, and they don't take that little fee out. So by buying from there, I know that that the author, maybe they'll get a quarter of a cent more, but they're still, and the publisher is getting more money from iTunes than they are from Amazon.
Yep.
But that's so I always look there, and then if I don't see them on iTunes, well, most of the authors that I read are with independent publishers, and the independent publishers do furnish their books to iTunes. So if I see a book that I'm interested in, but it's not on iTunes, then I question whether I'm going to buy it. I mean, I guess that sounds kind of snobby, but if the person is only publishing something on Amazon, it tells me a lot about, or it already gives me a lot of information. That sounds bad, but it doesn't. It's the truth.
I feel the same way because there are tons of authors out there that are just publishing on Amazon. You know, it's Kindle or nothing, and you'll see dozens, hundreds of blog posts, blog articles on how to make money on Kindle, how to do this, and it's why limit yourself? It's like, yes, they may be the largest market out there, but there are still other markets out there that still want to buy. And that's another thing. If you can, don't just do ebooks, do print. People still buy and like print.
Of course. Yeah.
Why? And there are authors who just want to do print and are reluctant to do ebooks. But to me, I just can't understand why limit yourself.
Yeah, you should do both.
You should do both.
I don't know
if you can.
As a publisher, I don't always take the books to both print and ebook. Usually we go to ebook, and then if the author shows me that they have a marketing strategy that you know all of this stuff, that they're really going to go out there and promote it. Not that the ebook hasn't already cost me money, but the print, there's extra fees, there's extra time in there for me.
But you're also, taking the economics into the situation. These are, people.
I'm like, I'm a publisher. I'm in business. I need to make money.
But we're talking about, these are, authors who really haven't taken the time to study. Well, okay, I got the book done. Now what? And they're just thinking, one way, and that's the way they're going to go, regardless.
Right.
Without thinking, well, what if I want to sell direct? I can, sell direct from my website or blog or whatever. Or if I do sell so much and I can convert into print or, whatever. They're not thinking that far ahead. Whereas like you said, yeah, you'll go into print if the author can, prove their chops. And so it's like, okay, yeah, I'm willing to invest in this because it's not going to be cheap. And print returns are even more deadly than ebook returns. Probably.
Well, we don't allow them. Mm-hmm. I learned very quickly, and then after watching Triskelion go down, they were for those who are watching who have don't know about Triskelion, they were actually as big as Samhain at one point. They were quite a big publishing house for as far as indies go, and the whole fiasco with Borders and the returns, it just crushed them, and then they were out of business no sooner. And that had to do with the returns. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that, and I had some of my authors trying to talk me into taking returns, I told them no. I'm in it for the long haul, and if a store wants to buy the books, then they need to be realistic about how much they're going to sell, or as an author, you can take them in with you, and they can do the buy on commission. Mm-hmm. Or so we have an author who will actually go in and sell, and he'll do book signings. And what people don't realize, this is a lot for a smaller independent author, even for someone who's published by New York standards. He will go in and do book signings and sell like 25 copies per book signing. And that's a good sum of books.
Yeah, we have a few authors who that we still publish who would buy. We offer them a discount, and they can buy a box of books or however many books they want or need, and sell it, mark it up however much they want, and they will sell their own books and keep. Tell people, you can make more money, more than your royalty. If you want to do it yourself, we're not going to stop you.
Right. So. Yeah, well, I will keep a copy of the print books. I will, I'll buy like a copy and then just keep one. But people want to buy from Amazon or Barnes & Noble. They don't want to buy off of my site because you have to pay shipping. And I'm not big enough where I can go to the U.S. Postal Service or FedEx or UPS and get one of those big discounts. I just don't have it. Mm-hmm. And I can't have it shipped the next day overnight without a $20 fee. So it's all part of it. It really, I think people forget when it comes to art, that art is not just art. It's also a business, and that's how you have to treat it. That's why it's important. I had someone call me the other day saying, I want you guys to publish me. Well, first off, we're not accepting any submissions right now. But what is your book, or what are the books that you have? And maybe I can point you in the direction of somebody who can help you. And she had some YAs, young adults, but she called them books or novels, but they were 60 pages long. And I told her, I said, first off, most young adults are reading 400 or 500 page books. That's mass market. They're reading like 80, 90,000 word books. And a 60-page book, whether it's single space or not, is not big enough. Welcome, David. And so it's not big enough for most of them, depending on depending on whether or not this is what this topic is. So then I started talking to her. I said, if you've had problems with publishers, it's because these aren't long enough and they have no market. There's no market for it. So my suggestion would be for you to self-publish if you really believe in these. And I would highly suggest that you get a good editor. Oh, no, I don't need an editor. I'm really good with English. And I'm like, hey, first off, I am a publisher and I am an editor and I know what I'm doing. And I have a number of publishers who are also editors and authors and whatnot. And I would never, ever, ever put my work out there without having someone else edit it. Exactly. Because it's my baby and I'm not going to see anything wrong with it. Right?
Exactly. I think some authors don't quite understand that you yourself, having written a book, you could read it 10 times and you will just gloss over, because you in your head you know what happens, you know the stories, you know the sentences, you sometimes don't even know entire paragraphs. So when you go through it, your mind is just glancing over it and you don't see certain things. You don't see the missing quotation mark or you don't see the typo because your mind already knows the story.
Marcy, I've already cried on your shoulder about the horror stories I've had with editor, authors who didn't want to listen, and it's just mind-boggling because, like you said, I'm an editor. I publish books, and I have people edit me. I will send something to my editing friends, or Jim, or have someone else look at it and say, does this make sense? What works? What doesn't? I'm not that vain.
You just need to look through it. That's all. Just somebody just to look it over.
Well, but not even that. There's times when I have been through a book 4 or 5 times as an editor, and learn from you is okay. So this is David says, wow, I just entered the right room. Miss Marcy, I'm writing a book and I would love to learn from you as to what I need to do to get it published. So the question becomes, Dave, are you wanting to self-publish or are you looking for a publisher? Those are 2 separate things. And Jim and Zetta would also be able to answer this question because we've all been in the publishing industry for a number of years now. I'm still 29.
I just turned 21.
You just turned 21. You look closer to 21 than I do to 29, honey. So
gives it away.
There's a lot of things that need to be done. You first off, you want to make sure that it's ready to even be presented to an editor, and sometimes that means sending it through a critique group or a few, I wouldn't say friends, but writers whom you trust that would be called beta readers, and before you send it off to an editor. And so it's kind of it's a long process, but if it's something you are certainly interested in doing, it's something that you should pursue and take the time. Do you have any specific questions, Dave? Because publishing is a vast industry, and this alone, we could spend hours and hours and hours. So if you have something specific, yes, if you have something specific, we could certainly help you with that. Some of the things you definitely need is an editor, and you want to make sure it's a good one.
Yes.
So your completion date is May. Okay, that's great. And so you're starting to do your research now, which is very important. Getting that research out front.
That's right. You might want to, Zetta could talk about this, you might want to consider doing a self-edit first, depending how competent you feel yourself to be. Self-editing, Zetta?
Yeah, usually after I finish a manuscript, and after editing so many people and so many thousands of pages, tend to look at things or notice certain things, one thing I always recommend people to do, and they might not be able to see this for themselves, and this is where a beta reader or another pair of eyes will come in handy. I call them crutch words. These are words or phrases that you use again and again and again. You don't see it, you don't recognize it, but it's there. If I were to do a highlight and replace, and it will pepper your entire manuscript. That's one thing. You know, there are certain words that writers tend to use or overuse, and if you know what your words are, you know, just highlight them throughout your manuscript, and then look at every single one and see if you can get rid of it. Comma usage. Comma usage is another big issue. Some people don't know. They don't use enough. Some use too many. And there's a right... How can I say this? There's an exception to every rule. But you want to be consistent with whatever rule you pick with your writing. So use a style guide if you don't want to pick your own rules yourself. A lot of people use the Chicago Manual of Style, and they treat that as the Bible. But there are dozens or maybe hundreds of style manuals out there. You can create your own style when it comes to certain things.
Not commas. Not commas. Don't do that to me.
No. But what I mean by that is you can pick from certain rules or exceptions that pertain to your writing and use them in a consistent manner, to help form your style. And that helps when you're writing manuscripts and you want to submit to editors and publishers or whatever, that you have a basic template for certain grammatical or punctuation rules that, unless they say otherwise, you can refer to, and you can produce a neat, tidy manuscript for submission.
Yep.
So, Dave, are you writing nonfiction or fiction? Because there's also different rules when compared to fiction or nonfiction. And so that's also important to know. And some things that I don't know if you've already started doing it. If you want your book to be successful, you need to be out there already building what they call a list or a following, and because otherwise it'll get out there and it'll be just one of the many. You're writing a fictional book, so that's great. Yes, I got a message from my child, so she wanted to know if she could go over to a friend's house. So you're writing a fictional book. Fictional books are different from nonfiction, and that can also include the punctuation and the verbiage you use and all of that. That becomes different from what's considered okay with fiction as opposed to nonfiction. I happen to be a lover of commas. And I am seeing a lot of... What baffles me is people who do not like to use the Oxford comma.
Thank you.
You and I, Zetta, we're two of a kind. But then people that will put a comma in between the first action and the second action when there's only an and in between. And it's not an aside. And I don't understand why. They said, well, this is it's a really long action. And it doesn't matter if it's a really long action. You still have one subject. I get a little passionate about this. There's still only one subject, and unless it's like an aside to that person that is thinking, and it's just kind of an aside, then you can put the comma in there. But that really, the only way you know about that, or the only way you would recognize that, is that if you have been a writer and you've been doing this for a long time and you understand when it's I don't know if you know, well, you probably, the two of you probably know theater, and you know what an aside means. It's something that is directed to the audience, and it's not essential, and it's just kind of thrown off to the side. And but in writing, more often than not, it's people are starting to treat every second action like an aside. And I want to strangle somebody. Yeah. I don't know who started that, and I don't know why editors aren't catching it, but it drives me nuts.
And you know what the sad thing is? The sad thing is that Oxford, even Oxford, is relenting and not bothering or enforcing the use of their own Oxford comma anymore. It's like they have, I guess, they crushed under the weight of ickiness. But to me, I just don't understand. I guess I mean, I'm old school. It's like I prefer Oxford comma because it provides clarity, and to me that's more important than bad punctuation or what other people are doing. Another thing that annoys me is single
the pet peeve.
How long have we got left?
Yeah, I know. I'll be quiet. But, you know, single quotation marks, unless, you know, you're maybe writing in Australia or Britain, but, you know, American writers using single quotation marks when it's not a quote within a quote. And what else? Oh, apostrophes facing the wrong way.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? A part of the apostrophes facing the wrong way is because of words.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
So you have to. So, for instance, like if I drop off the "un" for "till" and I start it with "till" and I put the apostrophe there, Word will automatically curl it towards the letter. And so then I have to go and find like a contraction, like your, or not a contraction, your, or isn't, or wasn't, and copy that apostrophe and put it in front of till. Now, if you have an error where sometimes, you know how there's somehow word slips in a different font. So rather than having the curly kind, it goes straight. And if you do a search and replace, it will go and fix the ones that you've just fixed. So it's quite.
For me, it's like I'll
so as editors, we have to be anal.
Yeah. I mean, I will just type a double apostrophe and delete the one facing the wrong way. And then, you know, if I do a search and replace, you know, I'll do it at the end. Or if I see it early on and it's being a problem, you know, I'll do it then, so I won't have to think about it. But I was asking about.
So he's saying, well, Dave said, well, I always thought then when writing a book, especially when it's your first book, that you just write and the editor does the part about adding all the commas and semicolons, etc. Let me tell you something. If you are looking for a publisher, you want to clean that manuscript and make it as polished and perfect as you can. Because if you do not, and you have a lot of grammatical errors and punctuation errors, you are going to get a rejection so fast your head will spin. A lot of publishers, not just New York publishers, and agents will do the same thing, and independent publishers, the time of where we are teaching authors how to write is quickly fading.
Yes.
And now if you want to pay an editor to do that for you, then you are going to pay for that service. But what I can tell you is that it's very important that you also learn the craft and understand why a comma is where it's at, why a semicolon is where it's at, because your writing will become tighter and tighter, and it'll become easier for you to be able to express what your thoughts are, and the reader will understand it better. So if I would say, yeah, your first draft, you don't worry as much about that. But after, and then you go back in and you read it through, and that's when you start editing and you start changing and fixing things that you see as an error. Even all of us editors who've been doing this for years, I will find things that are wrong in my manuscripts, and I will go back and I will fix it. Because I have to.
Yeah.
Because I am a bit OCD. So, but it's very important. So don't expect the editors to do it, and especially if you're subbing to a publisher, absolutely not. Aw, thank you, Dave.
You've got a fan, Marcy. Yep.
I've got a fan.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
It's about, as a writer, it's also about improving yourself as a writer. Everybody has to start from somewhere. So when you first start writing, you have to realize that your first book or your first effort isn't going to be great. It might have a great story, it might have a great concept, it might have a great plot, but what you write, if it's your first one, won't necessarily be your best work. But you can then, as Marcy says, you go back through it, you start to polish it up, you start to pick up on things, and then you start to see things yourself and you improve yourself as a writer. And once you've done two or three books and you've had a focus on improving your writing, you can actually become quite good if it all works well.
No, Jim is absolutely right, Dave. What's interesting is that if you have a specific writer or author that you follow and you've read all of their works, you will see a definite progression in their work from the first story that they wrote to the last story that they wrote. Sometimes the last story may not be the best story that they wrote because especially in this market now, a lot of these big authors are being pushed to write books faster and faster, and they're not allowed the time that it really takes to write a good story. So their craft suffers, as does their work, and unfortunately for the readers too. Now, there's some authors who haven't had that issue, but I've seen a lot of the big best-selling authors whose works are up and down depending on what their contracts require them to do.
Yeah.
But Zetta's, of course, only get better.
Well, one of my favorite authors from a while back. He's I don't know if he's still alive now. John le Carré, is a British spy writer. His early books, including one of his most famous ones that got made into the movie, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, it was almost a novella-length book, even though it was in print. It was a very thin book, but then he progressed to things like where the George Smiley character came in, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and those books were hundreds of pages, hundreds of thousands of words, and he progressed, and his writing is. I don't know if you've read John le Carré.
I haven't personally.
You can read 3 or 4 pages, and he's very, very literal, and you can get to a point where you have to go back 2 or 3 pages to think what he was referring to, because he does. One phrase would be he goes on a bit, but he goes on a bit in such a way that it's readable, and he takes you through the story. But his writing did progress a huge amount from some of his early books, even though his early books were really quite good too.
Well, what I find too, what I was finding is we were getting a lot of submissions. While they were very well written, they were written more like a CSI show or a TV show rather than a book. So you'd have 5 or 6 points of view. And probably 4 of them, maybe even 5 of them, only one was really necessary. And sometimes 2. I'm very picky. I don't necessarily like multiple points of view. There was a series back in the 80s called The Australians. I think there was the Americans, the Australians, and the Canadians or whatever. And it was a historical series, and it followed a group, and it was quite long. And I probably shouldn't have been reading it because it had some questionable stuff in it for someone of my age at that time. But at one point, what happened is I was really, really into the series, and then there got to be so many points of view that I just couldn't follow. And there were certain points of view of people that I preferred over others, and I got tired of having to, turn back 30 pages to find out where I'd left off, or 40 or 50 or however many pages it was. There was enough of a stretch between the points of view that I had completely forgotten what had happened before. You know what I mean? It's not like I didn't have a good attention span. It was just so much had happened. Or you wouldn't see a point of view for an entire book, and then they'd start up the new book with that point of view. And that began my where I started looking specifically for books with one, maybe two tops points of view, and especially for mysteries and thrillers, I find that unless it's done so well that having the point of view of the villain takes away all suspense whatsoever, because suddenly now I know what's going to happen or who's done what, and people just don't realize that this is not a TV show. This is a book, and especially with a mystery, I can, most of the time, the reasons I usually don't read mysteries is I can figure them out within the first 20 pages. Or if someone has written it so that it's not revealed until the very, very end, and there aren't really any clues in there, then that also pisses me off, so to speak.
It's a Columbo factor. Columbo is like that. You got the big, when you in Columbo TV programs, you got the big reveal at the end, and you thought, where did that come from? Because you didn't have any clues previous to that. He only revealed the clues right at the end. Dave asked, how often do you guys come here? Because I have to go, and I would love to learn all I can. I will do my research, but nothing like these types of sessions. And we come in here, or I come in here, I interview different guests every 4 p.m. on Thursday. So 4 p.m. PST. So if you're on the East Coast, that would be 7 p.m. your time. I will definitely be having Jim and Zetta back just because I like them. And they are my friends, but yeah, I do. Oh, see, that's all I had to say to get a little love. I just needed a little love. And so I come here. It's Marcy Bond's Publishing Lounge, and it's every Thursday at 4 p.m. Well, evidently Jim loves me more than Zetta.
I'm still trying to figure this out.
That's okay. It's like you're a little stingy with your love, honey, but that's okay. I appreciate that you gave me one anyway. There we go. So, and thank you for coming, Dave.
Yes, thank you.
It was great that we were able to answer your questions. So it is 5:04. So we end at 5 o'clock or right around there, unless we have questions. And I want to thank you too for coming to and letting me interview you and chat with you. And also, how can people find you?
Well, like I said earlier, if you type Jim and Zetta into search, we'll come up. So it can be jimandzetta.com, no spaces, blog.jimandzetta.com for a blog, or at Jimandzetta for our Twitter. Dave's sending a lot of love here.
Yes.
Thank you, Dave.
Love is good.
And my Twitter, we're on Twitter at Jim and Zetta, or I have a Twitter account at Zetta B, ZETTA for Zetta Brown.
Yep.
And you can find me at Marcy Bon on Facebook. So that's MARCI, B as in boy, AUN as in Nancy, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Google+. You can also find me at finallypublished.com or wildchildpublishing.com or freyansbauer.com. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
And see, Walter, Walter popped in and then popped out. So yes, it is. That's okay. Oh, I will give you some more, so you don't feel so lonesome, Jim.
Yep.
So, and thank you for coming. And again, I will probably be. There's no question. I will be inviting you back. This was lovely, and it was great to see you again. It's been, gosh,
absolutely.
So long.
It has been so long. Especially now that we're stateside instead of being in the UK.
That's true. It would have been a little more difficult to do this if you were still in the UK.
Yep.
Yeah. It would have been 4 a.m. there.
I would have still been up probably.
But not Jim?
No.
No. 11 o'clock, I'm dead.
You're
Dead at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a pleasure, absolute pleasure being here. And we'll come back anytime you need us.
Great. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.